Thank you for joining us for the Trachtenberg School Alumni Panel, Multisector Career Perspectives from MPP Alum. I am thrilled to have this panel of Trachtenberg MPP alumni to share about their current work, their experiences, the diversity between what they do. And this is just a chance for all of you to learn. So I'm going to ask Elizabeth is first on my screen. I'm going to ask Elizabeth to start providing a little of information about herself and that career path. And then after that, we will go into Q&A. So Elizabeth, turn the floor over to you.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Denise. And thanks to GW for putting this together. Participated in a couple, and I found them really helpful for myself as well. So my name is Elizabeth McGuigan. Right now, I'm the Vice President for Policy and Government Affairs at a group called the Philanthropy Roundtable. And the Philanthropy Roundtable is a network of charitable givers. It includes private foundations and individuals who all come together around a mission to foster excellence in philanthropy, to protect philanthropic freedom, and to help donors advance liberty, opportunity, and personal responsibility. So my current role, I oversee our state and federal government affairs teams, as well as our policy research and external affairs staff. And our team specifically is charged with advocating and protecting what we call philanthropic freedom, or the ability for charitable donors to give how, when, and to what causes they most value. So we want to see more support flowing to charities and to the most vulnerable in our communities. And the best way that we see that happening is to make sure that there aren't any new obstacles or policy restrictions on what that voluntary giving looks like. And as far as career path goes, when I graduated from GW with a master's in public policy in 2009, I was already working at the time for a nonprofit advocacy organization called Americans for Tax Reform. I had previously interned for places like Kellyanne Conway's polling company and other positions that led me right to ATR out of undergrad. And my first role there was in state government affairs. But the organization and my boss at the time, Gerber Norquist, really focused on coalition building. So that was a good opportunity for me to build my network in the advocacy space, and also to become sort of a solid policy generalist. From there, I joined a financial firm where I helped build out a policy research arm for the company to help serve institutional investors. And this was a really hard but fun way to use my policy background and my MPP to help translate what was happening in DC for investors in New York and beyond. I was there during the financial crash and bailouts and stimulus plans and Obama's election, Dodd-Frank healthcare reform. It was really busy and exhausting and exciting. So after that, I moved over to Bloomberg Government just as it was starting out. I started on the tax policy team there, and I was actually working for one of my former GW professors, Joanne Weiner. I'm not sure if she's still there or not. And then shifted over, started analyzing Congress, federal policy more broadly. And I eventually left DC moved back to my home state to help with some family needs. And up there in Connecticut, I took a job running policy for the trade association for the firearms and ammunition industry. And here I signed up for working on things like export control reform and labor law issues. And it was very quickly pivoted. The Sandy Hook shooting happened down the street from our offices 1 month into my job. So very quickly, my focus shifted to how is the industry to help prevent tragedies like that from happening again. So I stayed there for 8 years. Was happy to help enact laws like getting records into background check databases and advancing how the industry addresses ongoing crises like suicide trends in our country. And the last thing I'll say is just during COVID, I was able to take advantage of the increase in remote opportunities. So I joined the Roundtable in 2021 to run their policy research work. And just about a year ago, I moved up to managing the broader team where I am today. So yeah, I'd just say throughout my career, the MPP has really been a crucial tool for me. So I've talked too long. That's where I am and the pathway there.
Fantastic. This is great. Tinze, you're next up on my list.
Hey everyone, my name is Tinze Gabriel. I graduated from the Trachtenberg School in 2018. And I feel like my career trajectory might be a little different from other folks on the panel. I actually went straight to grad school after undergrad, which I'll say retrospectively, I'm like, probably would not have done that. Just because a lot of my classmates at the time, they had worked, and so they knew what they wanted to get out of the degree, whereas I was still kind of like exploring my interests while still, actively taking courses. But while I was at Trachtenberg, I was also working. I was a paralegal, and I had always been interested in social justice and criminal justice. And I once thought I was going to be a public defender, but after interning in undergrad, just could not see myself in a courtroom, and so decided towards public policy. And then when I graduated from Trachtenberg, I interned at the DC Fiscal Policy Institute, where that was kind of my first experience of actually applying the things that I was learning in the classroom. And while I was enrolled, though, in addition to working as a paralegal, I was also doing some housing organizing in the district, informing tenants about their rights, and really engaging in that way. And that's where I also saw like the gap in policy, where I felt like I fit into the larger social justice community is working in policy. I didn't also see myself like organizing. I didn't feel like that was necessarily my strength. And then after finishing up at DCFPI, I started working at a nonprofit in DC called Families Against Mandatory Minimums. And I was a policy associate doing a lot of advocacy work, lobbying, a lot of legislative work to help and reduce our incarceration crisis in this country, and working mostly at the state level, because that's where a vast majority of people in this country are incarcerated. And then I pivoted a little during COVID, after working there for 3 years, working at a membership organization for public defenders. And but then I missed doing advocacy work. I missed doing policy work. And so I'm currently a senior research and policy associate at an organization called Forward.us. And we're a national advocacy organization working on criminal justice and immigration reform. I only work on the criminal justice side. And so my role is kind of similar to the prior role I had at FAM, but with a bit more emphasis on research. I help support our campaigns and our target states with various requests for research, so that we can, argue our cases the best as we can, as we're advocating for a reduction in, again, our incarceration rates in this country. I think that is it for now, but of course I am here to answer questions that folks might have.
I love hearing all the career paths. And we often hear that. I thought I wanted to go into law school. Justin, you're next.
Hey, everybody. Thanks, Denise, for organizing this. So I'm Justin Reardon. I came to DC to join the Trachtenberg School right out of undergrad as well. I had done economics and legal studies. I had thought about going to law school, but economics was much more interesting to me than the law. So I ended up trying to do I did do public policy with a concentration in budgeting and public finance. While I was at GW, I spent 2 years working at the Office of Management and Budget after graduating, and I left OMB to go work for the Government Accountability Office, where I covered I was a part of the professional development program, which is a great professional development program if you're looking for, especially if you don't have that career experience in between undergrad and graduate school. It really taught me a lot more about how to apply in a professional setting what I knew in a little bit different and less academic way, real world case situations. I did all sorts of things from focus groups to data analysis. It was a great program, but I found it was a little ex post and sort of calling the shots from the back. which I wasn't super interested in. So I jumped into the fray at the Congressional Budget Office. So if you've taken a federal budgeting process, that is my job now. I assist the Congress in effectuating the congressional budget process. It's very interesting. I read a lot of appropriations laws. I stay very in tune with the political winds in DC, but I don't work directly in policy. So I sort of support them in doing the policy that they're looking to do and looking at the budgetary impact of the policies that the Congress is considering. I do have to say that I'm not here representing the Congressional Budget Office, and nothing that I say it reflects the opinions of the Congressional Budget Office, because I might provide some insights for those who are interested on the real world of how the budget process actually works.
I love that caveat. Thank you, Justin. Now we'll move over to Ethan.
Everybody, I'm Ethan Pollock. I thank you, Denise and GW. I graduated within MPP in 2008. I took about a year between college and grad school because I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I had actually planned to delay going to grad school because I was thinking about law school like so many others. And then I remember I got convinced by the admissions office to just like accept, even though you might defer anyway. And then they just kept sending me kind of these courses that for me to enroll in, and they just all looked so fascinating. So I said, fine, I'm from California, but I moved cross country to DC and I've been here ever since. And I also, like Justin, focused a lot on budget and tax policy and public finance. I also, like Justin, then did some time at OMB. I only did a few months for the summer internship. I should say also that the only reason why I did that summer internship is because the Career Services Center at GW was very aggressive in telling me that I had to apply for it, whether I wanted to or not. And made sure that I had submitted a resume to them so they could review it, and they got on my case a lot about it. I kept telling them, oh, I've got classes that I need to like focus on, and they're like, that doesn't matter. You need to apply for internships now. So you should be like applying to internships right now. You should be looking at it. Classes are actually less important than this. So that's how I ended up at at OMB. And then after I graduated, I went over to the Economic Policy Institute, which is a nonprofit progressive economics think tank. I was also focusing on kind of budget and tax policy, started as a policy analyst and worked my way up to director of fiscal policy. A lot on budget policy, a lot on tax policy. This was kind of the first, Obama's first term. I was involved in some of the Recovery Act design and tracking. During that, and a lot of tax policy too. During that time, I also then got detailed to the Bowles-Simpson Commission. I know this is a deep cut. Some of you may not remember this. This was 2010. We had a fiscal crisis. Good thing we've solved all those fiscal issues now, so we don't need to have another one of those. But yeah, so I was on the Bowles-Simpson Commission as a staff economist for about 8 months or so, and then went back to EPI. But I got a little, Justin, I salute you for staying in the federal budget game. I got a little frustrated with it and shifted over to the Pew Charitable Trusts, where I focused a lot on state budgets actually, and trying to figure out how they could be designed in a more countercyclical, or at least not a pro-cyclical way. And so I did a lot of things on like rainy day funds and capital budgets. And then I got recruited over to the Aspen Institute by some former colleagues that I had worked with at the Bowles-Simpson Commission. And so I then at Aspen Institute, it was the Future of Work initiative that was getting stood up. There's this new commission, this new initiative. It only had about 6 months worth of funding left. But I saw a lot of their ideas and thought, we can fundraise for this. This is great. And so I convinced them to hire me as their research and policy director. And then, that was kind of the future of work initiative. So it's kind of focused on everything, right? The future of work kind of is everything, gig economy and, portable benefits, responsible capitalism, adjustment programs, vocational training, and other post-secondary education. But I really started moving towards post-secondary education and workforce development, career technical education as an area that I found really interesting, and one in which I just felt like we did not have a formal system, in particular for career technical education as alternatives to college. And so I started building out, my boss at the time had given me kind of a long leash. I started building out kind of a side body of work on that. And raised a little bit of money to support that work, put out a few papers, and then I got brought over to Jobs for the Future. So Jobs for the Future is it's where I currently work right now. It is a national nonprofit organization that works to create pathways to economic opportunity and advancement by transforming post-secondary education and workforce systems. We do a lot of different things. We're currently running the Good Jobs Challenge at the Department of Commerce, the Job Quality Academy at Department of Labor. We're a DOL apprenticeship intermediary. But what I ran is this initiative called the Financing the Future Initiative. This is an initiative that got started a few months before I joined. I'm now the senior director of it. We are exploring new and emerging ways of paying for post-secondary education and training. And so this includes both trying to research what is working, what is not working, do best practices to make sure that those who are doing a lot of these, models are doing them in a student and equity-centered way. And then also a lot of policy reform as well to ensure that students are protected and that the regulatory guardrails are strong and they're clear. These include a lot of different ideas for shifting the cost and or the risk of post-secondary education away from students and onto schools and other entities. So in doing so also potentially aligns some of the incentives of the schools themselves with the student outcomes. So, the idea that schools will only get paid if the students actually do well, if they actually graduate, get a job, and make money. So these are ideas that have been in the ether for a while. And my initiative, we don't run a program, but we are kind of do a lot of ecosystem work. We're planting a bunch of seeds and making and kind of trying to make sure that all these different ideas, that some of them can grow and blossom into a transformative solution for our very, very broken post-secondary education system, and except for GW, which is amazing.
Thank you, Ethan. I always just love hearing what everybody's doing. It's just, I'm always in awe. And Therese, let's hear what you are doing and your path to get there.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name's Therese Smith. I did go straight through from undergrad to grad school, and I'm a WGW alum. So I graduated in 2020, which was fun. So right at the start of the pandemic, so if anybody is also a 2020 graduate of anything, then you know how fun that was. So I finished in May of 2020 at Trachtenberg with an MPP, and actually, shockingly enough, everywhere that I've worked has had like one Trachtenberg alum. So when I graduated, I went and worked for a company that was a contractor for the Department of Commerce, for Select USA, which is around foreign direct investment into the United States, and was there for about a year and some change. And then a company that does private equity and policy analysis called Capstone reached out to me. And so I ended up joining them in doing kind of like policy analysis for different companies and organizations that were interested in investing in different businesses and different industries, and helping them kind of understand like the policy verticals of what they were trying to do. And then I was there for a year and some change. And now I work at a organization called the Global Development Incubator. And I've been here since January. And we do social impact startups. So all of our work is around social impact and helping entrepreneurs in the social impact space kind of incubate their business. So that's from fundraising to, hiring like HR and operations and a strategy. And so particularly I'm on the strategy and build team. And the way that that usually works is an entrepreneur will come to us or be referred to us by a like close personal friend of our organization, or just in general, they'll find our website. Or we'll find them if we find a particularly exciting or innovative idea. And they'll come to us, and the Global Development Incubator, we have our own seed fund. We'll usually invest, a couple grand, not a couple grand, 150 to 250,000 into that idea or initiative. And then we'll kind of do our own diligence and research around, what is this idea? What does it really mean? What's the actual impact of it? And because it's global, we do have operations and work that we do in the US, in Latin America, in Southeast Asia, Africa, everywhere, which is super amazing. And so the way that my job kind of works is we're not consultants, but we are up to consultants, right? And so basically we all kind of work on our own respective initiatives, and we get kind of embedded into the organization that we're working with. So the two initiatives that I currently work on, one is called the Cooperation Game, which is around addressing polarization in the US, but the global focus obviously there being that there's polarization everywhere, right? Obviously, we've all kind of seen the news about Israel, but the researcher who brought this idea to us is actually working in Israel and Palestine and trying to figure out, how can we address polarization in a way that isn't about necessarily changing people's opinions and views, but really trying to think about how do we actually help people be able to have a discourse and a dialogue. And then the other work that I do that's completely unrelated to that is around cognitive behavioral therapy, or just talk therapy for former child soldiers in Liberia. And so those are the two projects that I work on. And actually one of the other projects that I'm potentially going to start working on is actually led through the Aspen Institute, Ethan. And it's the Global Opportunity Youth Initiative, our youth network, that has a few different kind of programs running in various places. And I apologize in advance. I actually just got back from a trip out of the country, so I'm kind of sick. So if you guys hear any coughing or my throat sounds a little funky, that's because of that. So yeah, I can definitely talk more and have lots to say, but I will stop there.
First of all, I'm always amazed at our alum. Ethan is sick, you're sick, that you all still come out and do this for students. This is incredible. We had an alum last week at the World Bank for a panel that actually had to decline because she was about a week from giving birth and wasn't feeling well. So you all are incredibly dedicated. So I'm going to take a pause. I certainly could ask questions, but I want you all to have this opportunity to ask questions that go to all the panelists, that go to some of the panelists. This is your chance to really ask them about their work, their career path, the way that they integrated things with school. So let me see if anybody wants to start with a question. Pause. So, yep, great.
Thanks, Julia. I'm a MPP student who is graduating in the spring, and I was just wondering, this is a question for everyone, like what, if there's like one thing you would like say to do or like give advice for someone graduating next semester, what would that be?
I can go. If I would say keep in touch with the people you're in school with. I think that's something that, I've been out of school for a long time, and some of my good colleagues that are in completely different industries have been really good sounding boards over the year in terms of career growth and general feedback. So that would be my top takeaway.
Yeah, and I would also just add, and I'm sure you've heard this from Denise and other people, but I just want to like validate and just affirm that is, networking and in doing those like informational interviews. I think that's actually really beneficial to do now in this semester as you're like hopefully preparing to apply for jobs next semester. I know that I just like sent people messages on LinkedIn because they also went to the Trachtenberg School. And what I found from my experience is alums are really open to helping other people. And so even if they didn't have a position open at their organization, they were still willing to give me advice or point me to other organizations. And so I would say maybe make a list of organizations you're interested in working in or what field, and see if you can look up on LinkedIn. Usually it will tell you if there's an alum there or not, and see if you can just get coffee and they can point you to the next opportunity that there is. I know that's really helped me. Like I had one alum literally sit with me and was like, open your notes app, and like just told me all the organizations that she knew of that aligned with some of the values and missions that I said that I was interested in. I've had folks look at my resume, so folks are really, and I'm sure everybody on this panel, myself included, would be more than happy to do that for you as well.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I think the biggest thing I would say, and I think what I had to think about when I was graduating and stressed and was like, we're in a pandemic, is really just thinking about, where do I want to work? I think for a long time, as I was applying to jobs, I was like, I need to find like the perfect job, and it has to perfectly align and have the exact title that I'm looking for and pay X amount, which of course is always important. But I think what also was super helpful, like as I was kind of navigating that process, was also just thinking about like, what types of organizations am I passionate about? What's really interesting to me, and what is actually going to, keep me engaged. I have had in the past, like 3 years since I've graduated, had, 3 different jobs that have all kind of been like similar, but also very different. But I think the really big thing is just trying to figure out like, what types of organizations do I want to work for? Rather than trying to find like the exact role or the exact title that kind of aligns with your vision of what you kind of see yourself doing after grad school as well.
I just add, these have been great suggestions. I would also add the keeping in touch, not just with kind of your cohort, but also professors too. So when I applied to Economic Policy Institute, I actually didn't realize at the time until I got the job that actually a former professor of mine, my econometrics professor, was a senior economist there. And she was actually unaware that I was applying. I got the job anyway, but like it was just like a reminder of like, oh, that's right. Like, so in particular at GW, so many of the professors, this may not be their full-time job, right? That they may have another job in DC, and they either themselves may have, openings at their organizations, or they may know of people. If they're in DC, they probably have their own large professional network. And I found that GW professors are very good with that. Just to add also to the previous comment, there is this kind of pressure to feel like, oh, this is my first job out of grad school. This is the beginning of my career. I need to start off in the right job. And I definitely think that the recommendation to focus a little more on like, what is an organization that you're really going to want to work for? I think that that's really good advice. Because even if you don't necessarily like your job, you can get a lot of value just by feeling like I'm part of something bigger than myself and something that I really believe in. But even beyond that, I would say just like, don't stress it too much. That like, this is not going to be the job that you have likely for the rest of your life. This is just going to be your first job. My own career path was kind of winding through a bunch of different policy areas. And yours might be too. And, I think there's a lot of value in, just because you go into one area doesn't mean that's like, oh, I'm going to be like this person, and this is going to be my specialty for the rest of my life. You can kind of bounce around a little bit, and that's okay. So I wouldn't stress too much about, making sure that the first job you get out of grad school is like your dream job and the thing that will put you on absolutely the best career pathway, or at least the career pathway that you think you want. Because honestly, the career pathway that you think that you want may not actually be the career pathway that you're supposed to take.
Yeah, the other thing I'll add to what Ethan said is not just the organization that you want to be a part of, but how you want to be a part of that organization. So making sure that the culture of an organization will fit your culture. Like if you're super outgoing, especially these days, I think there's a lot more variation in how coworkers interact with one another, how organizations interact with one another. whether it's a hybrid work environment or a fully remote work environment. Do you use video cameras when you're in conference meetings? Those types of things I have found very important to me in making, because the work is important, but your happiness in the work is also very important, because otherwise you're not going to be performing at your best.
So I have a couple follow-up questions from what you said that I'm gonna hopefully will help with the students who are here. One is that's a great point, Justin, is how did you figure that out? Like, well, how did you, through the informational interviews, and how do you, because I always say that culture is everything and people underestimate it. And I'm also curious because, you know, how you made decisions about, did you consciously think about what sector you wanted to be in when you made your pivots? Like, how did you all think about what you were looking to do next, whether it was sector, whether it was skills you were looking to get, to make those smart decisions when you did either take your first job out of school or you pivoted? So I know I put a lot in that question, but I feel like this would really get at a lot of the questions that we get in our office.
Well, Denise, I think for everyone's a little bit different. For me, it was policy area driven mainly. That's how my career path has gone, from OMB to GAO to CVO. They're very similar organizations, but different ways of looking at sort of the same problem. And you know, for other people, the culture of an organization is going to be more important, or the mission of the organization will be more important. And I think some of that will come with trial and error, but I think informational interviews are super helpful. And then almost every interview ends with the, do you have any questions for me, right? And I always use that time to explore some of those softer skill sides of what the organization's like, how people interact with each other. Do they go out to happy hours, or is everyone pretty private with their personal life? Those types of things will give you a really good indication for like people's motivation at the organization, and can give you a really good insight to what your future coworkers might be like.
Yeah, and I would just add, I know somebody else mentioned the power of internships, but I feel like the internship process is so important, not just for figuring out like what sector do you want to be in, but what do you want your work environment to look like. I mean, I know I interned for a couple government entities, and I figured out pretty quickly I didn't like the feel of the giant bureaucracy. I wanted to be somewhere smaller, more nimble. Like that was the culture that I was looking for. And I knew I wanted something where the ideology resonated with me. I wanted to be working for something I believed in rather than a corporation. So it was some of that trial and error was really good for internships, but also to, you know, earlier points that, you know, my co-panelists have made, early jobs are a great way to kind of try different feels on.
Anyone else want to add to this question about how you make decisions about what's next for you? Vectors.
I can share a bit about, because I know I mentioned a few positions that I've had since I graduated. And I mean, being completely honest, my first position out of grad school was an internship at DCFPI. And I was like, I'll take anything because I need policy experience. And so, because I was working in grad school, but it was a paralegal position, and that was not necessarily a career track that I wanted to move forward with. And so I made that decision with DCFPI, even though it was an internship. I was like, oh, give me the experience that I need, then I can, you know, look for more permanent full-time positions. And so my first job ended up being in a criminal justice reform advocacy organization, and I fell in love with the issue. It's no longer just something that I see as a job. It's something that I personally believe in and fully see myself contributing to for the rest of my life, whether it's at a 9-to-5 or not. And for me, that plays a big part, because a mission of an organization, the value and the goal that we are working towards is something that I would look for when I'm looking at jobs, because I want to further the value that I have, and I care deeply about our criminal legal system. And so for me, it's kind of unique in that I'm a bit kind of narrow in the issue area or the policy area that I'm interested in working in.
I had I wrote down, I think, like 5 factors for me. So, one is kind of just, when I'm thinking about this is a little less about, deciding which job to take, because there's going to be some of these factors that are going to be unknown, but more broadly, I would say just kind of like how I evaluate jobs and whether they're kind of worth my time. And, it's kind of, you have kind of the joy or lack thereof of kind of just like the daily work, right? Just kind of the going into the office. What do you do every day? Is it monotonous? Is it intellectually stimulating? There's the kind of skills and expertise development, right? Are you actually learning stuff that you really care about? Is there a broader purpose that you feel like you're fulfilling, that a broader purpose that you believe in? Do you, that may be kind of like, I'm making the world a better place. It may not be that, but I think that, that you can derive joy from just kind of feeling like you're a part of something, something bigger and something that is meaningful. There's, I think, the question about, kind of career path, about like, is this moving me kind of, further along in my career to the direction that I want to go in. And again, it's tough to know because maybe you don't know what direction you want to go in, or maybe you think but it'll turn out a little different. But nonetheless, like, will this kind of advance my career? And then the fifth thing, of course, is money. I mean, money matters too, and got to pay the rent, got to pay the bills. And also just remember that that compensation is oftentimes has a lot of path dependency. So if you start off with a lower salary, it takes a little bit of time to build that up in successive jobs. But so I started my career with actually an extremely low salary. I forgot to do salary negotiation, and it took me a few years to kind of catch back up, I would say, to where some of my peers were. I did that purely because, though, the organization I was joining, I felt so aligned with it, and I felt like the mission so resonated with what I wanted to be doing that that at the time it was worth it.
Great. I could ask more questions, but let me pause again and see if there's other questions from the attendees. So I'm not seeing a hand or in chat. So a question I'm going to ask is one that oh, nope, Patrick, go for it.
All right. Can you all hear me? Good. Okay. Yeah, going back to the point that was made about, focusing on a particular policy area, I'm wondering if there's, aside from that, any other hard skills that you ended up using that maybe you didn't expect to use. I'm particularly interested in, Ethan, you'd mentioned research, so I'm wondering if any type of like statistical analysis tools that you either came in and used or learned how to use as you were kind of working through your career.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so in my MPP, I got experience both with SPSS and Stata. I would say that Stata was moderately helpful. Econometrics overall was extremely helpful, and that's something that I still use to this day, even though I am not myself doing a lot of the data analysis. I'm a co-author on a report that's coming out that does a lot of data analysis with, luckily, a PhD, so he's the one that pulls the microdata. But nonetheless, like, I would say that those, like, having a deep knowledge of statistics is really useful. The thing that I have used for data analysis definitely more than anything else is just the tried and true Excel. Having really solid Excel skills, I cannot recommend highly enough. It is a very versatile tool. It does a lot more than you think it can do. You can even run some regressions in it as well. It's a little clunky, but like, you can make do. So yes, I love Excel. I will swear by it. And I think that was one of the most important skills that I got in grad school, at least when it comes to something like a specific software skill.
I was just going to add, this is so funny, actually. That's a great question. funny because this is something I just recently remembered, but program eval talks about a theory of change, which, because I work in social impact and a lot of these organizations are like nonprofits, they have theories of change. And because I took a program eval class and I'm able to kind of like talk through and understand and like ask the questions to kind of help organizations, like especially as they're thinking about scaling and innovating, right? How do we look at these inputs? What output do we want? What's our long-term goal? Because the really big thing that GDI likes to say a lot is we're risk takers, right? We're really risk positive rather than being risk averse. And so the idea that, you know, instead of saying we're going to help 1,000 people, why didn't you say 1,000,000? And so really, like, I've spent, I want to say like a month ago, I was in Boston for work, maybe 2 months ago, I was in Boston for work, and we spent like an hour just talking through like theory of change for something that we were working on. So like very random, seemingly soft skill, but was something I was like, I remember my program eval class and talking about a theory of change. And like, now I'm talking with like my CEO of my company and talking through like, okay, this is how we fix the theory of change. So like, and then Excel, of course, like is everywhere and it never leaves you.
I would just vote again for the quant skills. I mean, that is absolutely vital. And I am not in quantitative jobs. And it's still Excel, even Stata is still on my computer. It's still useful to have. But I would also say that I think one thing I noticed for new hires coming onto my team is you might not need the MPP necessarily to understand the policy work, but the way that you communicate about the policy work and about the change is dramatically different when I see people I'm hiring with masters versus not. I think that communication skill, the ability to distill down complex ideas and communicate it out to a specific audience, that is like the gold of the program, in my opinion.
I definitely agree with that. I know in prior jobs and now too, of like how just like realizing how my master's degree helped me become a better writer, to be more succinct to the point, and to be able to explain complex policy ideas to different audiences. And then I'll also add, like for me, I wasn't necessarily interested in pursuing quantitative research with my degree, but I will say going through those courses has helped me, because now at least I can say like I'm able to read and understand research and evaluate whether it's reputable or not, and whether or not it's something that we can use in our work and something that we can cite. So I think at least having that threshold is helpful. And then I will say though, like there are people on my team who like runs data and do data as well too. So definitely, if you're able and interested, definitely pursue that.
So I'm going to allow for one quick question, and then I do want to open up the breakout rooms. So if you want to ask your question, and then I want to make sure we have time in the breakout rooms.
Hello, thank you very much for your sharing your experience. I'm Ayjan. I'm from Kazakhstan, Central Asia, and I'm at the application stage. I have applied, but haven't started, so I have more practical questions. After learning the curriculum, I see there are a lot of courses on econometrics, statistical, quantitative. Does it need more very strong mathematical skills, quantitative skills? I mean, in order to study at this program, should I be very strong in?
I would say that relative to a master's of public administration, math skills and sort of your comfortableness with numbers is very helpful. But I work with numbers every day, and I don't trust myself to do arithmetic at all. I use a calculator. The other thing is when I say something, sometimes it can cause, and I make a mistake, it can cause really bad implications. So I don't trust myself to do basic mathematics. I use systems to do all basic math for me. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily your math skills need to be super strong, but if you're super comfortable with numbers, I think, and not afraid of data, and working with large data sets. I think an MPP is definitely like more up your alley. But if large walls of numbers and large data sets, and you like talking more in qualitative than quantitative data, an MPA may be sort of a better choice than an MPP.
Mhm. I worked as project assistant at USAID and the European Union delegation offices in Kazakhstan in cooperation offices. But last 10 years, I'm working in administration as finance and HR. So I would like to choose international development concentration and to learn policy analysis. And as an international student, I would like to ask if I come, I'll come with my family and children. How could you manage? How could you manage full-time studying, job, and family? Is it possible, especially if you are coming abroad?
I'm going to have this be the last question because I do want to open up the breakout groups, and I want to see,
Sorry.
as a prospective student, you also can connect with us in admissions and in career services, and we can have you speak with other international students and other students who have balanced that. But I want to because I want to make sure people have time for the individual groups with this. But does anybody want to answer a question about how you balanced life and family and school just very quickly, because I do want to have 5 minutes. Anybody try to do that?
I'll just say really quick, I didn't have kids and I did not come from another country, so very different experience, but I worked full-time during the program and I did find that manageable. I was married. My golden retriever did lack some attention, but otherwise I found it to be manageable because I feel like the program is structured for people to have lives, but that was just my experience.
Yeah.
And we have had other people to do it. And I would encourage you to reach out to our admissions office so we're able to connect you with people who have done that. So absolutely, because it's great questions. So before I end the recording, I just would love to thank our alumni. As always, it is just phenomenal. And I say this every time, but I genuinely mean this. Hearing what you all do allows me to hear about what goes on in the world. It just gives me hope and faith, knowing that we have Trachtenberg alumni out there doing, each of you are engaged in such different parts of making the world a better place. So thank you for giving me hope. Thank you for giving perspective to students about the work that you do, how to build careers in the space, how to navigate their time at Trachtenberg to build these careers. So I want to tremendously thank all of you for what you do.